was fun. He said I had a really nice. I almost did that, didn't I? Shh.
Can we make that live, please?
Can you turn the mic down, please?
In Post Falls. How many of you know where the city Post Falls is? Okay. There's a person there from my hometown that owns a barbecue place, Willie Spradley. And I was just so shocked. I went in, had lunch, and he came up to me and he said, where are you from? He's talking to everybody at the tables. And I said, I'm from Carthage, Texas. And he said, I'm from Carthage. Yeah. Okay, if you're from Carthage, tell me a name that I would recognize. And he named off 2 or 3 people. What? Bernie? Oh, you've seen the movie Bernie. Yes. Bernie was actually a decent friend of mine before he went to the dark side. How many of you saw the movie Bernie? This is a stupid question for me to ask. Okay. Whew. The others, y'all just stay in the dark. In my hometown, we had a gentleman that was a soft, gentle Christian that went kind of crazy and killed a person and hid the body in a freezer for like 6 months. And they did a movie about it. That's what they're referring to, Bernie. I didn't expect to share that information today. Okay, we're going to be live. This is going to be a great presentation. Very close friend of mine, and actually the executive director of communications at KI, and he is involved in so many different things. Very active family, very active at our work, very active physically, plays basketball, bowls. I've gone bowling with him. How many of you bowl? Okay, my wife just started bowling with her mom. She's on a league now. Her mom's 83. 83, is that right, Beth? 86. Her mom is 86 years old. She's been bowling for 40 years. Her partners are beginning to die, and so she convinced her daughter to take one of their places. But anyway, Gordon and I have bowled together, and I just wanted to tell you that he's going to share with you some history. He was the one that actually got to drive around with Chuck in the early years and listen and participate and support, and he carried the products and answered questions and stuff. So he's got history that a lot of us don't get to share. But please welcome a good friend of mine and a Christian to the core, trying so hard to make KI glorious representation of our Lord Jesus Christ. Gordon McDonald.
Well, hello. I had to figure out how loud I was going to be here. My name's Gordon McDonald. I'm executive director of communications, and that name carries a lot of pressure right now. I have been with Koinonia Institute for a little over 21 years. Most of that time I had the great privilege and honor to be able to travel with Chuck. We traveled a lot, as you can imagine. And, I know most of you, or at least a lot of you, from past years here. I have been the proverbial fly on the wall. I got to sit in the presence of the great teachers of our time when they were unmiked at lunch discussing things. And the discussions were, they didn't all believe alike. But it's been a wonderful thing, and I want to talk today. I'm odd. I came out of the 60s, and I'm odd. Life is up here, and I live somewhere down here, and I'm continually trying to translate myself to up there, and sometimes trying to understand even what's going on up there. And so one of the things that really is near and dear to my heart that involves this conference and what I've done for the last 20 years. I was Chuck's research assistant for, once a research assistant, you're always a research assistant, but by title for 16, 17 years of that time, I was Chuck's research assistant. I was the one that was sent out to find the concentration camps and the incinerators and the Russian troops on American soil. Anybody remember all those issues? I was the one that was sent out to find those. Didn't suck. It was kind of fun. I like adventure. And all through that time, almost every time that Chuck spoke, he would speak this question. What is your greatest challenge? What is your greatest challenge? There's many challenges. It seems the further we go in time, the challenges build, not just to us, but to our country also, of course. But our greatest challenge, what is your greatest challenge? And Chuck's answer, when I first heard it, it was kind of counterintuitive. He said, guard your heart. That it's important for you to protect your heart. And at the time, you hear it the first time, and I really didn't have a clue of what he was saying until he started bringing up some of the scriptures. Take heed to yourselves that your heart be not deceived. Somehow you have a play in this. And ye turn aside and serve other gods and worship them. And I came to the Lord through, as you can, told you, I live down here. I came through unusual circumstances. I came to the Lord not through witnessing, not through the Bible. I came to the Lord through miracles. In fact, I required that of God. That was my way of testing of whether he really is who he said he was. And once I was convinced of that, once I saw that for myself, then the Bible opened up, and then people's words meant something to me. And once I had that, God put something in my heart that I never wanted to be deceived. I looked around, like I said, I came out of the 60s, and there was so much deception going on then between right and wrong and truth and all that routine. And I never wanted to be part of the problem. And so when Chuck brought up this first scripture here, I said, not me, nobody, never me. What do I have to do to keep my heart from being deceived? Because there are some significant repercussions to that. Who, accepting the Lord and knowing the Lord, intentionally goes to serve other gods? Very few. And in fact, if you can make a case philosophically, if you really met the Lord, you would never. Intentionally. But there are incremental failures, if you're not doing the right thing, if you're not continually striving to do the right thing, you can incrementally get yourself into a position you never intended on being in. Serving other gods, and not just serving other gods, but worshiping them. Now, when we hear this, I probably did it wrong. When we hear other, worship them. When we hear this idea of serving other gods, we immediately think of stone statues and Allah and all these things like that. But that's not what it's limited to. Anything that you put your heart and attention toward can become a god. Any of those gods, the next step in that relationship is the worship of them. And that's putting them first in your life, right? That's nothing I ever wanted to have anything to do with. And then John 14:1 says, "Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me." Have you ever been successful at this? by the way that for one, it says, don't let your heart be troubled. It says, don't let your heart be troubled. There's a lot of statements in the Bible. This is sort of one of Chuck's rabbit holes. There's a lot of statements in the Bible that we disregard. Not so much disregard as we don't take notice of how specific they are. When it says, don't let your heart be troubled, that is not God saying to you, it's a I'm suggesting that you not let your heart be troubled. He's saying it's a declarative statement. It's an order from your commander-in-chief to not let your heart be troubled. Now, any failure in that, he's there to pick us up and dust us off and put us on the path to be able to try again this time, hopefully, or we're a little stronger and we can accomplish a little more in this area. But it's not we read over that. And we say to ourselves, yeah, this is a nice idea, but it's unrealistic. There's too many things in this world. There's, goodness gracious, now we have Ebola. There's too many things in this world that we can focus on and fall from that statement right there. But we have to start taking these commandments. The New Testament has as many commandments as the Old Testament, if not more. We have to start taking these commandments seriously before the Lord. So that was the rabbit hole, because that's very important. Your attitude toward what you read and what you're asked to do and who you serve and all that will prevent that previous verse of serving other gods and worshiping them. So he said, let your heart not be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me, Jesus, right? And I've often wondered, why all this concern over your heart? And I think in part, at least, it's in this verse right here. Because where your heart is where your treasure is. And if your heart is down in the cares of the world and the concerns over what's happening here and there and all that, so your heart will be, your treasure will be there also. That's the last thing you want. You want your heart to be firmly in God, where Jesus prayed that you would be, in the Father. So our challenge at this conference, this again, I sort of, for 10 years of this conference and for 20 years following Chuck, I was Gordon McDonald, the unnamed servant. I was you. When Lewis said that I got to travel with Chuck, and I want you to know, we were traveling one time after about, 15 years of doing this. And we were going from one place to another in a car, and we were in total silence, which didn't happen a lot because I had Chuck Missler next to me. We were in total silence, and I thought to myself, I go, shoot, it sounds like I've had all my questions answered. And immediately I thought of you. Because I was the one at the book tables and all that interacted with you, and when you didn't feel like you could either get to Chuck or you deserved to get to Chuck. I didn't understand that, but you were timid to go to him or whatever. You came to me with your questions, so I got to hear all your questions. I want you to know those were the questions after 10 years of riding with him that I got to ask. And some of the product that came out of those discussions and just casual conversations and all that, they were a result of your questions. So I was you, and so I was thinking when they asked me to speak, what can I contribute? I've been you. And so this is a lot of this is what I've learned from being you. and hopefully it's from your perspective, and it may help. I've gone to a lot of these kind of conferences, not particularly this kind of conference because it's different. We are different, like it or not. We are different, and it's a little different, but a lot of Christian conferences, even ones that focus on geopolitical issues and that sort of thing. And honestly, after 2 or 3 days of listening to speakers telling you of what's really happening, the truth, and yet it's not good news, it's draining. You know, it just takes everything out of you. Guard your hearts, because that's not a proper reaction either. And when you start feeling yourself having these symptoms, stop yourself in place and get yourself right back in God, so that the things that you're hearing become useful to God. Because all this is for the glory of God, right? It's not for our understanding or our well-being or our us knowing what to do or how to do it or whatever. It's all for the glory of God. God can use that among you. So the question here, I mean, what is your challenge at this conference? It's our responsibility. We've gotten a lot of, over the years, and particularly this year, we've gotten a lot of people that either email us or call us up. Hopefully it's email, it's easier to deal with. Or call us up, and they have a complaint about who we invited to speak at the conference. I never really understood that, you know. But remember, I live down here. Even pastors, how can you give this man your podium? It's not ours, for one. But it's our responsibility to bring diversity to you. Because no matter, and we'll get more into this, no matter what we all think, who's perfect here? My hand shouldn't be up when I do that. I just wanted to let you know you're supposed to raise your hand. Who's perfect? As soon as you do that, you know you're not. None of us are perfect. None of us know the truth, really. We're operating on data that we have gotten from other people, which may or may not. This is the researcher in me coming out, by the way. This is what I tell you when you call me up and tell me you have evidence of these conspiracies. You have data from other people you have no idea what the source is and who they were, and if it's like on the internet, 3 internet locations will use each other for corroboration, and then it becomes reality. And so it's our job to bring you competent perspectives and a variety of them, because the truth is in the variety of them. I'm going to tell you the whole story before I get through my slides. This is great. No 2 people agree on everything, right? Okay, I want you to all look to your left, the person next to you on the left. And if it's not your wife, look back to the right. I'm saying that person you do not agree with in so many things that most of the time you don't even want to talk about them. As if, it's a competition or something. No 2 people agree on everything. I was the one that sat at a round table with Dave Hunt, Hal Lindsey, Tim LaHaye, Chuck Missler, Grant Jeffrey, Chuck. This one of those big round lunch tables, they're like 8-foot ones or whatever. They were all around that after eating lunch at a conference, and none of them agree. Well, there was some agreement, but on everything none of them agreed on everything. And these are the men that we look at. These are men we look to. That was so enlightening to me. And the other thing that's interesting that we forget a lot, we don't know what we don't know. Now that sounds like trick words, but the reality is, when you have a data set, you have no idea where it's complete or not. You don't know whether you have that extra piece that changes everything, that the analysis is totally turned upside down on. You don't know. You could be wrong. Did you hear me say that? I could be wrong. We don't really hear that much anymore these days, not even within the Christian church. So our challenge at this conference, did I go backwards? Oh, this is the second part. We're counting on you. We've put together 20-something speakers. That's including all of the dinners and all that sort of thing. 20 speakers. We're counting on you to be the Bereans. And Chuck has banged Acts 17:11 his whole ministry career. It's not our responsibility to tell you the truth. We may be wrong. It's our responsibility to bring you the perspective, and you do your own homework. And then you teach us. It happens all the time. Kingdom, Power, and Glory, the book. Not that one, excuse me. This Generation, the study. Has anybody listened to it? That there's a difference between, I'm going to get it wrong, Luke 21 and Matthew 24. Right? They look like, if you just cursorily read them, they look like the same incident, just in two different Gospels. But you look at them, they're different. Chuck studied the Bible for 40 years. Didn't have a clue. A little, very timid lady came to him with a page and a half of exegesis on a wrinkled piece of lined college-ruled paper and said, Mr. Missler, I think I found something, but I don't know how to evaluate it. Can you just read it? And fortunately, it was short enough. We get this a lot, but they bring us that much, you know? And there's no way at a conference or most any other time we have the time to actually go through that. It was short enough that Chuck, and the Spirit was moving, Chuck stood there and read it and got this sort of blank look on his face. And he turned to the lady. This doesn't happen enough either. He turned to this timid little lady and said, I think you're right. I'm wrong. That became a study and unfolded a whole new understanding of the New Testament to us and gave us so much more detail and texture of the end times. It was crazy. So when, you know, I'm not here to like pump Chuck up. I really don't have to do that, right? We're all pretty much well understand Chuck. But one of the things that I want you to know, I've seen them all. I've been in all their presence, and I've acted like I don't understand and asked the simple questions, you know what I mean? Just to see what answer or what action I would get. And I can't count to you the number of times that Chuck has figured out, it's our worst nightmare, that Chuck has figured out that he was wrong in something that he taught. It's real simple to him. He goes, change everything. You know how he teaches modularly? He says, we have to change everything. Now, and then he walks away. And then it's our job to find all the nooks and crannies where this is and change it, and we have to change it. There's not a question. The saving grace in all this is that we're mostly electronic. We didn't have to throw out $10,000 worth of books that are on the shelves. There was a quicker route to changing it, but it had to be changed. That is probably why I've been with him for 20 years. he still is learning. And he still admits that he may be wrong. Now, we've had some discussions and come to borders where we have some disagreements ourselves. We don't agree on everything. And but neither one of us has enough of the information to actually, win, if you will. And so we've just sort of walked away from them. We're not trying to force, obviously, our version of the truth on you. The purpose of this diversity is for the Holy Spirit to speak to you, for you to find that truth. Because if we tell you the truth, you will discard that just as fast as the enemy can come up with a deceptive way of taking it away from you. But if you find the truth yourself, it's much more difficult. It cannot be taken away from you. It can only be hidden and contained. But it can't, ultimately, it will come back and bite you. It cannot be taken away from you. And so it's not we're not even trying. I did it wrong again. I really messed it up. Excuse me. Wonderful machines, huh? Our focus is to get you to find the truth. It's always been that. Chuck's always said it's our job to get you back in the Word. He uses all these hooks and ladders and all these interesting little tidbits to pull you back to the Word. Because that's where life is. It's not in all the, UFOs and all this sort of stuff. It's in the Word of God. That's where the real help is. We are watchers. I told L.A. that I was going to do this. L.A. Marzulli is one of our speakers. Great guy, great friend. He did a video series. Are you familiar with it, The Watchers? Yeah, well, it was a little short-sighted, I told him. It really wasn't for what purpose he was using it. But all of us are watchers. We are the watchers. KI and K-House have been watching for Chuck's over, who knows how many years now. Lost track. Time flies, doesn't it? But here at K-House in North Idaho, between 20 and 25 years, we've been actually watching. And why are we watching? What are we watching for? Is it to tickle our ears so that we know whether there really are concentration camps and there really is Russian troops on American soil? That either one we couldn't do really anything about, even if we knew. Are these the real reasons that we're watching? Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass. Remember, that is not a suggestion. I've had this debate. There are churches that are full on, probably most of the churches. I may be unkind in that. There's a huge volume percentage of churches in the United States that believe that they shouldn't. There's no cause to be watching. All they want to be, their idiom is, all they want done is to be doing Christ's work when He comes. They're going to be rudely surprised when He comes back and assesses what they've done. Because it's statements like this that are not suggestions. You are required to watch. And if He's just said that, if that was all that was in the Bible, we would have been obligated to our King to do what He said. But He is gracious. He actually gave us a glimpse into what the purpose of watching was. To escape all these things. To escape all these things that shall come to pass. They're not maybe going to come to pass. They will come to pass. We'll talk about some of that. Therefore, let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. Let us not sleep. If you're not watching, you're sleeping. I was talking to a guy last night, and he said there are negative emotions, there are positive emotions, and then there's neutral emotions. And I go, I'm sorry, but I don't know what planet you live on. There's no such thing as a neutral emotion. There's no such thing as a gap between those that sleep and those that watch. If you're not watching, you're not actively watching, you're sleeping. And then it again says to us, but let us watch and be sober. Has nothing to do with alcohol, by the way. It means level-headed. Let us not be silly. Let us not treat life sillily. We can have fun. That was most of my job when I was on the road with Chuck. It's a hard life out there for 20 years and being away from your family 3 out of 5 weekends and that sort of thing. And the people are wonderful, but they're unending. A good portion of my job was making sure that we had fun, that we just did something fun. So I understand it's okay to have fun, but we're supposed to be serious. We're supposed to take all this seriously. And why I say unto you, I like this one. All these statements concerning this are so cut and dried. I'm a very black and white kind of guy. I say unto who? Is anybody exempt? Those people that are doing God's work and that's all that they want to do, are they exempt? It says, I say unto all. And the commandment again, watch. And this is why we watch, looking for that blessed hope and the glorious appearing of the great God and our Savior Jesus Christ. And Maranatha, come Lord Jesus. I'll have more to say about that here coming. So in the last years, what have I learned? Some of the major things of what I learned is not able to do that in an hour. There was a book written in middle 80s by Edgar C. Whisenant. 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988. It was funny back then. It's even funnier now. But the sad part of this, I couldn't remember the spelling of the guy's last name, and so I was looking on the internet. Still for sale. Now I don't know whether it's some used copy or whatever, but that's the other thing that, let's take another rabbit hole. That's the other thing that we take far too lightly. Prophecy. Somebody says this is going to happen. In the Old Testament, if it didn't happen, what happened? Immediately. I mean, everybody, the Democrats and the Republicans, took them out and they stoned them. This was not a partisan issue, right? They took them out and they stoned them right away. They stamped out what somebody who was presenting himself as a mouthpiece for God who proved himself to be a lie. They stamped him out of Israel. Stamped him out. I'm sure Edgar's doing just fine right now. I'm not advocating stoning anybody. Please don't anybody believe that's hearing this on streaming. That's not the point, but we take it far too lightly. How many pastors have done things that the Bible says that if you can't do these things, how can you then lead the family of God? And yet, at best, they take a year off. And then all of a sudden, they're forgiven, like they're forgiven. Like that is, You know, the man's forgiveness is anything. You know, God's very clear. You know, there's very clear guidelines in the New Testament about these issues. It doesn't make the person any less when he comes back. It just means he can't fulfill certain positions. He had his shot, and he led the. It's not that he sinned. He led the sheep astray by his example, and we take that much too lightly. Okay, rabbit trail. So I'm going to run into Lewis's time such that he won't have any time. So this book is a legendary work. And it's not the kind of legendary work that you want to be associated with. So Jesus saw fit not to come back in 88, right? And he saw fit not to come back yet. Is he going to come back? Will Jesus come back? Yes, but not yet. Well, not yet either. He can come back at any second, any minute, any instant, right? But he hasn't come back yet. This is all going to make, hopefully, so that was a large statement. I was going to say this all going to make sense after a while. So what went wrong with Edgar? You know, was there an error in his thinking? Well, obviously there was an error in his thinking because it didn't happen. What did he misinterpret? You know, words are much more specific than we use them usually. What did he misinterpret? There was no misinterpretation. There was only, messed that up, didn't I? It's only misunderstanding. What's the difference between misinterpretation and misunderstanding? Misinterpretation implies that you have the whole of all the data, and that somehow you have put the conclusion, the analysis of that data together wrong, so you come out with a misinterpretation. Misunderstanding is when you think you have all the data, but you really didn't. And one bit of data comes up and it changes everything. God's really good at that one, by the way. So like in Y2K, the aftermath, and we've had time to come to grips with it now. It's 14 years ago, which that's even weird just to think about that we're not all Mad Max or something right now. And we've either heard or said, I told you so. That I could do 2 hours just on that subject alone, because I believe it had great. If anybody wants to ask me. I think God was way at work during that period of time and for a specific purpose. Looking back, knowing what we knew then, would we have acted differently? No. Because there was no misinterpretation, there was only misunderstanding. We did not have all the data. And maybe some grace from God. And that's part of the question that I can't deal with right now. I don't have time. So then we go to the 95 type era, and the stock market is, skyrocketing at 1,600. That was a joke. But it was, and it looked like it. The stock market was skyrocketing at 1,600, and there were great fears that it would drop to 1,400 and everything would crash. Because our debt load was so hard, so heavy, that we wouldn't be able to recover once the catastrophic and systematic destruction started. That was in 1917. There was no misunderstanding because, did I put it on here? There was no misunderstanding. Will there be a collapse? We're in a worse situation now. Here we are, and the stock market is 16,000 or whatever it is today. It's been kind of volatile lately. Was I close? Yeah. And the public numbers are that we're going in debt to the tune of about $1 trillion a year. And I'm sure most of you have seen Chuck's little presentation on how much a trillion is. Have you? You know that's just the public numbers, right? I mean, it is so much worse, you really don't even want to know what the real numbers are. So, yes, there will be a collapse. All the data is conclusive and overwhelmingly conclusive. And Chuck and I have had many discussions over this. But when? That was my question to Chuck. In '95, we were saying everything's going to fall, and with what we had to work with back then, it made all the sense. It was overwhelmingly conclusive. Nothing has happened for, is that 20 years now? Everyone so far has been wrong on the timing of it. And the other question that I always ask is how widespread? You know, we in the United States were very myopic. Our neighborhood we know, our region of our city we know, maybe our state, depending on which state you're living in, how crowded it is, maybe our state. You here are enough interested in that you have a concern for your country. But I want you to know that economic collapse is going to affect the whole world. They have not divested themselves of the US dollar as yet. I don't know even if they did that, whether that would be enough to keep us from that. If we fell, everybody falls. And we know, we've got examples anyway, of what has happened in other regions and that sort of thing when there were just interruption of services, basic services, as opposed to the financial system itself. People take whatever there is. They don't even need what they're taking, they take it. And everyone acts in their own self-interests, but will that be enough to save us? And the idea is that if there are people, and we've heard the conspiracies and that again don't have enough data to say it's true, we can say we suspect, of these people supposedly that are trying to at least control the world and direct certain sectors and that sort of thing. Is it in their self-interest that there's chaos in the streets? Anarchy. Everywhere. We still outnumber them. To get that chaos, that anarchy back under control is, it's never even been contemplated, much less attempted. So we have all of these issues that are coming upon us. Do we have a clock? Oh, great. See, when I was putting this together, I'm going, wow, can I fill 50 minutes with this? So you're all nervous that you're going to come up 15 minutes and going, oh, well, I'm done. Ebola's in our country. Is it dangerous? Does it kill? Yes. But is it a pandemic? We had one guy die in the United States and he didn't get it here, right? In fact, that guy, they quarantined all the people that flew on the flight with him from Africa to here when he came. And none of them got Ebola. And that demonstrates how difficult it is to get. It's not a pandemic. Will it be? Unless they've altered it. We've heard those stories. No evidence, just stories. It's not likely to be, because it's not a pandemic virus. It's too hard to get. It's actually hard to get. So we have ISIS. I could talk again. You just don't know how interesting the whole ISIS movement is. We have the Taliban that's rising up as the United States withdraws from Afghanistan. We have Russia that's hanging out in the balcony with our attention on the Middle East. They have not been just kicking back, taking a vacation. We have the Hamas who are trying to connect with the ISIS. We have Iran who's trying to use all of this, their support for to go against ISIS as a opportunity for them to get more concessions in their nuclear program. And probably with the current administration, they have a good probability of that happening. We have the midterm elections. I put down there Democrats. I thought that was a little cruel, but we have, as if they're a crisis. We have the midterm elections. It could go either way. It depends on how well you think the voting system is. Well, there's already been instances of Democratic operatives sending out memos with a ballot attached to it, telling people to copy them, fill them out, and turn them in. Traditionally, there have been 10 trends. We expanded it to 12, too. We added economics and archaeology, and how can you not? We've had 10 trends for 25 years. We added 2. As knowledge has increased, the trends took on width. And it was kind of interesting. They became larger. The trends themselves, not just the information coming out, but the trends themselves became larger. And as we looked at it closer, there was actually something going on. And at one counting, when we sat down and we go, okay, what are viable things to watch? We came up with like 32 things. 10 had always gotten us about 95% of the information. That's why we chose those 10. But as we went through time, we found that those 10 were getting less information, less perspective. And the truth was, after we got done counting, we could have kept going on. There were so many different new things going on. Soon, any incident that was coming, we could define within multiple trends. How do you categorize, when you start categorizing this stuff? And so something started happening. And I think this, I tell you this because this is going to be important as you're listening to the other speakers over this weekend. It's not one thing anymore. It's the convergence between all of these things. All these trends are converging, and they're not just converging by 2s. They're converging by 3s and 4s. As we try to understand, we try to figure out which trends are colliding. Which ones will be the catalytic ones. Now what I mean by that is 1 and 1 does not equal 2. 1 and 1 equals 4. When 2 cultural or scientific or economic trends that are separate collide with each other, their equivalent effect is greater than the sum of their parts. That's how knowledge is increasing. We even do it. We get together and, we have a discussion about something and some new information comes out that we would not have had if we were alone. It's happening in all those different fields also. A good example is bioengineering and mechanical engineering. They have developed synthetic skin that is 1,000 times more sensitive than human skin. The whole field of appendage replacement and organ replacement and all that routine is being revolutionized. They're no longer making them back to human capability, they're making them better. And they're justifying it. There's a new eyeball. It can see great distances. And of course the secularists out there are going, so what's the big whoop? We all want to be robots. We all want to be machines. That is going on. So what will the convergence be, and particularly the catalytic convergences be? Israel's newfound natural gas supplies, what great news, right? Except, what is it, Ezekiel 38 and 39 says that the invasion comes because people are coming for spoil. When Israel got nothing, Ezekiel 38 and 39 can't happen. Now they've got something. And with the hope of actually tapping into, we think they're finding oil. No, we're finding the oil. That whole Middle East is one great big ocean underneath the surface of oil. And they're just finding new areas to tap it, and that's why it inflames all the Islamic Mideast, because that's all they got is oil. And if everybody's sucking from the same reservoir, it'll go down faster the more people find it. So Israel has something to take. Or Russia taking the strategic opportunity, while all the attention is focused on the Middle East, to do something provocative. There are all kinds of stories of Russian plans to do things really provocative. They're almost hard to believe that they would attempt. But they're not asleep. Or someone trying to weaponize Ebola, which if they could have by now, they would have. They're talking to the geneticists and all that. They're tracking the mutations, the DNA mutations. Every time you get infected, there's an opportunity for mutation for the virus. What they point out is, well, for one, they point out that there's no evidence that anybody's tampered with the DNA. That should be good news. And the other thing is that their position is that you can have a positive or a negative mutation, and it can just as easily, and you can't call it, it can just as easily mutate to non-infectious as it does to airborne or some other type of thing. So I just want to encourage you as you go through this conference to guard your heart. This information is not meant to scare you. It shouldn't scare you. It shouldn't lead you into conspiracies that you can't prove with data. Don't believe everything you hear. Don't be the sheep that they think we are. And so thank you very much for listening. I appreciate your patience. Thank you very much.
Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Okay. Chuck, would you stand up? Yes, you do.
I should have asked if he was here before I started speaking.
We're going to recognize the greatest teacher in all the world on Bible. Thank you, Chuck, very much. He has great information. He was sharing some out in the hall with me just a moment ago. We are going to take a 20-minute break. But I want you just to know, this guy loves me, and he helps me so much at K House. And sometimes we disagree. He noticed he disagrees with Chuck. He disagrees with me a whole lot more often than he disagrees with Chuck. I want you to know that.
I disagree with everybody. I'm sorry.
Okay, 20 minutes, so it's about 20 after 4 when you come back. It's pretty close to 4 o'clock right now. And then we'll still end at 5 o'clock. Okay, so your schedule's back on at 5 o'clock. I'm going to end my presentation at 5, so if you've got a schedule, we'll be back on. Everything's going to be good. And then we're going to do the trick, come back with your phones turned on, ready for the Facebook and the Twitter exercise. Okay.